and I'm using some new recording software, so hopefully everything goes according to plan. And then I will post all of our videos here in this link, and then if I have enough time, I'll put them in a nice convenient playlist, and you guys will have access to those documents whenever. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to assume that you guys have access to the syllabus, which is located up on Moodle. If you have any questions on that, just let me know. But it's pretty much just typical boilerplate LCAD stuff, nothing too fancy. And the course outline or the timeline, I kind of deviate from that a ton. I go left, I go right. I just kind of figure out what you guys are interested in, and then I just kind of attack those interests. So yeah, we'll kind of be bobbing and weaving as we go. A couple of little info points about me for those of you guys who haven't taken a class with me before. Again, my name is James Finley. Just go by James. I serve a couple of different interesting roles at LCAD. The running joke on campus is that I am the computer science department. I have a master's degree in computer systems. Actually, no, I have a master's degree in software engineering and a bachelor's degree in computer science. I am, yeah, so I'm like one of those programmer dudes. I used to be an art student. But then I said, you know, I'm not really, thanks brother. I was like, I'm not really great with this art stuff, and so let me just like minor in art, and then I'll just major in computer science and stuff, which I was pretty good at. And the reason why I love this class is that it's a way, I love the fact that visual effects tend to be that nice real convergence between artistic capabilities, technical capabilities, and some really great cleverness. I've been the studio director for a company of my own founding for about 10 years now. And I'm also the studio director of Unity Studios. So if you've heard of the game engine Unity, that's made by the people over at Unity Technologies, which is a Danish company. And the Danish are the modern day Vikings, so that's kind of cool. And so the sister company to that company is Unity Studios, and I run the North American branch of that. Are you making fun of me, Ashley? No, I'm not. No, I'm just trying to this is the part where I instill confidence. So stop damaging my my ability to instill confidence. I want you guys to know that that you're in good hands, and that it's my intent to take good care of you guys, and hopefully we'll all come out of this with a greater respect for visual effects. Super excited. Hey Sierra, what's up? Ashley and I have history, and so do Eugene and I. And so Ashley has this tradition of making my life hard, and Eugene has a history of being cool, calm, quiet, collected, and all of that stuff. So yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, Eugene, and Ashley, get off my back. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and initiate a screen share with you guys. Anybody who's taken a class with me will tell you that I'm really big on just kind of cutting to the chase. And so when I'm done talking, I'm done talking. I just I like to dig into topics, and then that's that. So let me share screen. Let me know if you guys can see the Cthulhu Kraken on my screen. Dope. All right, so one piece of software that you're going to need for this class is Unity. If you don't already have it, it's free. Do yourselves a favor and don't pay for it. Might have to give it a second, and if you don't see it, if you just see me, you might have to look at the preview of all of the different faces and avatars and stuff, and it might just kind of be tucked away somewhere in there. It'll be that huge ultra wide screen thing with the big old Kraken on it, but it might take a couple of seconds. Is there anybody here who doesn't have Unity installed on the machine that they're at? Cool. Yeah, if you do have it installed, I'd make sure that you have the latest version, 2017, the stable release. If you just go to unity3d.com and then just click on Get Unity, and then just snag the personal edition. This will get you going with Unity 2017.1. Old versions of Unity will work too, but they may not have all the latest bells and whistles and features that we might be talking about. Sierra, you just need to join the call. If you click join video call, it'll just like share your like face if you have like a webcam. So just by joining the call, you should be able to see the video portion. Awesome. All right. So we're not going to be doing anything like in Unity today. So just like take this next like week to get it installed, and that way you'll be all ready to go. What I do have for us today is a project that I'd like to go over with you, because one of the major questions that I want to get out of the way today, in fact, my only goal today, is to get to know you guys a bit, and also to sort of explain to everyone what visual effects are. And I think that probably the best way to explain what they are is to just sort of show some examples of what visual effects look like. For some of you, you might be thinking, well, I know exactly what visual effects are. But if you were to ever try to explain to someone or provide them with a definition of what VFX are, I'm sure you'd have a pretty challenging time. I mean, I know I do. Anytime anybody asks me what are VFX, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I start off by saying, you know, they're like the weird shape stuff. It's like fire, it's like water, it's like anything that doesn't kind of cleanly fit into a category, and then usually it moves, and it's, you know, you can't really like model it exactly, and it's got weird properties to it. Like I just like start, you know, bumbling through my through a definition. So I'm gonna go ahead and maximize my screen, or maximize my play here, and we'll take a look at some pretty decent visual effects in Unity. And so this is an ability, like who knows what it's called, and this ability is all about really, really interesting motion. We won't use any mathematical terms or anything like that, but if someone were to ask you like to 3D model something like this, you probably wouldn't know where to begin, because it doesn't really look like there are any mesh properties or qualities to this effect. In fact, what it primarily looks like is a bunch of really tiny looking particles that are all kind of swishing and moving around. And they kind of do this interesting wavy thing, as though they're kind of moving away and separating and just kind of being lost and carried away by the current of the wind. If you also look from one blast to the next, there is a slight variation between them. And so it doesn't happen exactly the same way each and every time. Now, the level of detail necessary to discern that might not be coming through in the screen share, but if you're looking at this on source, there are the number of particles is changing, the shapes that that they consist of are changing ever so slightly. They're more or less the same, but there's just enough modification in each shot to still make it nice and interesting to look at. And so if anyone were to ask you how would you go about building this sort of thing, you might be at a loss, but you'd probably guess that it involves these tiny little speckles and having control somehow over making them look and move and sway and do all these interesting sorts of apparent physics things. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other effects. Got a lot to go through. This one might be hard to see because it makes heavy use of a technique that we call refraction. And so what happens is there's like this water that emerges down here at the bottom. We'll try to come in at multiple angles. This is probably a good angle right here. So it's like this water dragon, right? It kind of pops up out of the ground. It does this like sort of like swimming in the air motion, and then comes down into a splash. The more geometry that I put between us, or rather that I put behind the dragon and the water effect itself, the more you can really start to see it and understand its shape. So like here, I'll just like, we have all this extra geometry in the background here. There's this little hut, this little torch, and you can sort of see that even though the color properties of this dragon are not really well defined, what it seems to do is bend the light and distort the things that are behind it. This is a technique that we just call refraction. And so we'll explore this later, but kind of interesting to just throw some vocabulary out there early. So it's cool. We want to be able to distort the image of the world around us to pull off some of these effects. Water, heat, any number of things like that. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can switch it over to nighttime to see if this helps at all with visualization of this. It kind of helps, like if you look at it, like where the fire's at, you can really start to see how some of that distortion is working. I'll try to switch between day and night, and let's go ahead and take a look at the next effect. All right, so this is a pretty one. So it's essentially the same effect, same exact geometry is being used in this case. So it's that dragon that's floating up and is reaches this apex and then slams back into the ground. So all of the same animations that we saw before, but what's really changed is the element here, right? So this is clearly fire-based. There's some extra particles. There's some nice ember movement. We can kind of see from that first example when the guy's shooting that, when the guy's shooting this thing right here, we can kind of see some of that work come into play here. So with all these embers, with all this this soot that's moving around, with all the smoke, and we even have some heat distortion, some nice texture movement as it collides with the ground and starts to spread out. And if you were to try to construct this geometrically, that would sort of be a challenge. It's pretty easy to understand that the dragon itself is probably a mesh of sorts. But what about some of these other bits? All these moving, this moving fire, this opening crack that seems to kind of spread and cover the ground. Geometrically, all of these things are really complex to achieve. And don't get me started on fire. Doing a real polygonal fire simulation, we're talking triangle counts, and a technique for moving, for animating fire that starts to really get to a point where it's not palatable for a budget. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some more effects. So what I'm going to do, occasionally, you guys, is I'll try to see if this little Skype logo is blinking. But yeah, feel free to talk in chat, and also feel free to use your microphones if you've got them and you wanna say something. Just keep it on mute when you're not chatting. All right, so this is a cool one. I use the word dope a lot. This is a dope looking one. Switch this over to night. So just a nice little AOE flame effect. So we get this nice circular ring, and then, so yeah, it essentially almost looks like the character is opening this fissure in the ground. Following that fissure, we get this nice cracking motion, and then we see this blaze and all this dancing waviness. And there's so many techniques that are being employed here, almost none of which are probably mesh-based. Right, what we're probably looking at is more of those little teensy tiny dots. We're seeing them kind of move and sway, what's seemingly in a physical manner, but which is probably actually much more of a deep mathematical nature to it. Here we have some cooked out, no pun intended, some cooked out flame textures that are being oscillated through, so essentially just playing a flipbook animation, or so it seems. And it's just a really, really gorgeous effect. check this one out, right? And so we're kind of opening up a rift in space, and we're launching a rock through it, right? Super cool, like almost like a cosmic geomancer ability. We have this rock that's essentially coming seemingly out of nowhere. If you look at the side of it, there's like, you know, it's coming from this rift, this hole that someone's opening up in time and space. Then we see this big old mesh come down. We have physics, so we needed to be able to detect. Let me turn on the day. So we see the moment that this rock collides with the ground, and we need to know exactly when that occurs, because this ability could take place from higher up. It could also take place lower to the ground. And so as this rock comes tumbling down, we need to be able to dynamically detect when it comes in contact with the ground. And when it does, we want to blow it apart. We want to shatter it. And you're also probably noticing that this simulation is not the same every time. These rocks are breaking apart in different ways each and every time because a different physics simulation is being performed in real time for each one of these effects, which is really, really cool. Also, you can see that there's that nice central explosion, which emits all this purple, this purpleness that sort of matches the tonality of the original ability. And so this level of groundedness kind of helps to bridge the gap, because if we didn't have all this purple smokiness that appeared to be at the core of that boulder, there would be very little that kind of roots these two concepts. We're not really used to, at least not in the real world, for a rift to be opened up in space and for essentially an asteroid to come through it. Essentially, we have what we might consider to be an Earth elemental, like, you know, just Earth rocky stuff, and then something astrological and spacey. And so it's actually pretty critical that we have that purple smokiness that emits from the center of this fracture to kind of tie these two elements together and make it all seem like it, yeah, oh yeah, that makes sense. Totally cool. Would look weird without it. Let's keep going. This one's a really dope one, right? And so we have what is essentially the same ability in the beginning. There's a lot less happening in terms of lots of particles. But we're also noticing that when it makes contact with that surface, that it is sucking debris into it, which is super cool. So it's almost like we're creating this, like, once again, we're creating like a rift, but we are sucking all of this, all these fragments and all these random geometric pieces into it. And so obviously, you know, if we were to sort of simply dissect this, there's a lot of that moving, wavy particleness, probably little to do with meshes and all of that. Nice glowing hot white center, some lighting effects, of course. And we need to detect the impact, so we need to know when it makes contact with those wooden, you know, pillars. And when it does, we need to create essentially a completely separate effect that has the added bonus of sucking objects into it and essentially devouring them, which is all kind of super dope. And yes, all of these are a thing. Let's see, where's that line coming from the torch on the wooden fence when the AOE circle comes about? What does the back of the black hole look like? Oh, let's go ahead and take a look. Do. So the back of the black hole looks like nothing. So this is essentially one-sided. This is most likely right here geometric. The actual, this hole right here, what we are probably looking at is geometry. And we're probably looking at geometry that is one-sided and is cold on the other side, most likely. And then the other question, actually, I don't know if I understand. That line coming from the torch on the wooden fence when the AOE circle comes about. Oh, possibly, yeah. I wouldn't worry so much about the environment. The environment's just kind of to make it look like, you know, less boring, I guess. But yeah, I love this ability. This is like super duper cool. This sort of thing, like, I love this stuff, and hopefully just by watching this, you're all super excited to be creating effects like this. Because, I mean, this is so cool, right? Like, all the mystery, I mean, first of all this stuff is gorgeous, and there's a tremendous amount of mystery and problem solving that goes into creating them. I'm glad you're hyped. I'm hyped too. All right, let's take a look at the next effect. This is super cool, right? Let me just kind of rotate around so you guys all get a really good feel for what's going on here. It's going to take me a while to dissect this one. Damn. All right. So what's happening? First things first, I might have to pause it as it goes through just so we can analyze it a bit better. Okay, let's take a look at jazz hands first. So here we got jazz hands. Now essentially what we're doing is we got these nice blue lights that are emanating from the positions of the hands. And they are made children of the hands so that they move with the hands. And something else that we're doing is we're saying, hey, wherever the hands are, let's emit some of those little tiny dots, those little tiny sparkly things. And let's also sort of imagine this. Imagine if we could say we want to turn our hands into 3D markers, where wherever you move them in 3D space, that space is now occupied by these nice vibrant lines, right? And so a combination of all these little tiny dots plus those 3D markers, which we're basically building geometry in real time, not pre-baking any of this, gives us the ability to make it look like our hands are glowing and we're casting this spell. All right, so let's keep going. So mesh comes flying from out of the sky, lands, physics, cracks, blows apart. And after it blows apart, what do we have? So we have this appearance of this slowing of time. I didn't even catch it fast enough, sorry. Jazz hands, crack. Okay, so all this nice smoke, debris, it's slowly separating. It all comes together at this moment. Blows apart into this nova. This nova, we're familiar with that one, right? That looks a lot like that original ability that we take a look at. And then something cool happens at the end here. See these rocks? How these rocks all start to do this thing that we call a dissolve, where they start to look like they're being eaten away by acid or something like that. Super duper cool. And that's one way to really make an exit. Dope entrance, and then instead of just these blocks doing the old school thing where they just kind of lay on the floor and then they just like fade away over time, which always looks lame, now they're just kind of being disintegrated because, I don't know, they don't belong in this world, and so they have this half-life, or I don't know, fill it in with whatever lore you want to add to it. Let's do this at nighttime just to see how cool it looks. Super awesome. By the way, that little dissolve effect, if you think that that's cool, that's actually one of the earliest effects we're going to be pulling off. So get hyped. All right. So nice little frost beam. This one's pretty chill compared to some of the other abilities we've seen. It's pretty tame, pretty calm. There's a lot of actual like texture work that's mostly doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. So we have a nice scrolling texture, probably a series of textures on top of one another that are kind of scrolling at different rates just to kind of spice this up, make it look good. Some distortion happening right here up at the front so that it looks extra smoky. Probably a fire simulation that was done in maybe like a program like Houdini or something of that sort. And then more of those cool wavy particle things. Yeah. Let's see if this one's epic at night too. This one's pretty calm, pretty tame. Yeah, looks pretty good. Freezing this guy in place. So if you liked that dragon earlier on, the one who was like all, watery, same exact concept here. Instead, except of applying that sort of an image or that sort of a rendering technique to the dragon, what we are instead doing is somebody went and 3D modeled this big old ice block. We're applying it there. It's refracting and distorting the image that is beneath it with some extra fancy normals information. Then what we're doing is we're slowly over time replacing that original mesh with smaller shards, and then we're blowing those things apart. And that's kind of a bug. I don't know why that appeared over there, but that's cool. Nice electricity, extra physics stuff, all sorts of things happening here. So mostly what we're playing with in this is electricity, nice wind up, hit, and then all sorts of extra sparks that land on the ground. Super cool. How's this one for showy? So this is a fire tornado. So up at the top, we have a nice, what appears to be a very simplistic smoke simulation. And so this smoke simulation is just kind of a bunch of those, it's essentially those really teensy tiny particles that you saw before. They're just bigger and they look like smoke. And they're doing all this nice cool rotation stuff, spinning around in a circle. And then here we've got all sorts of really interesting things happening. So we have this nice central twisty tornado that is essentially a series of meshes. So you can think of them as a bunch of almost like ribbons that are kind of intertwined and twisted about one another. Each one of them is unwrapped, so in such a way that when if you were to scroll textures along it, you would get this nice sweeping upwards motion. That is complemented by some particle effects that are essentially floating flip books. And if all the things I'm saying are just like, what the hell is he talking about? Don't worry about it. We'll be talking about all these concepts in the class. So we see a bunch of these like flip books where we're basically like, playing frame by frame animation of these flames as they're traversing from the bottom to the top of this firestorm. And then of course we've got our simple mesh work where we've got a bunch of these nice jagged rocks that are just kind of doing this nice floaty thing. And you can actually, if you look really closely, you'll see that these rocks are actually shrinking and turning into nothing as they reach about this midpoint right here. So they hit this vanishing point, and then the thing that you're supposed to be focusing on is this nice, much larger billowing head of the tornado. Really, really gorgeous effect. And yeah, the cracking ice is super cool. We'll be doing ice refraction as well. And at night, this looks crazy. Yep, super duper cool. Now we're going to take a look at some poison effects, or necromancer, dark magic kind of effects if you prefer. Nice. Swirly. Start off with this with a globule, which is probably a mesh that is being vertex deformed in real time. And then we chuck it. Some cool particle stuff is happening. It hits. More cool particle stuff is happening. Nothing too unique happening here compared to the other stuff we've talked about. Something else I should say though is like a fascinating property of like some of these particle effects is that we can actually change their color in real time, which is kind of fascinating. We'll talk about why that is and how that can be achieved later. We'll be learning a lot of this stuff. We truly will be. Our goal is to not go and recreate these examples. Our goal is more or less to talk about the individual pieces that they are composed of. So, for example, we'll talk about refraction, but we might not completely implement you freeze the guy and then he blows apart. So you're more or less like learning like the individual ingredients, and then in this class, when you're assigned projects, you can apply those ingredients in any way that you see fit to either create some of these or probably more interestingly create some from games that you've already played, or just create something that doesn't exist that you think would be cool. But yeah, we're gonna be covering a lot of the groundwork necessary to build up to these, if that makes sense. So it's like, instead of learning how to make a sword, we're going to learn about vertices, edges, faces, and all that stuff, so you can make a sword or an axe or whatever you want. Dang, you guys, it is like so hot where I live right now. It's like 107 degrees. I got the AC like running and I'm like dying. I don't know what the temperature is over there, but it should be illegal. All right, next effect. That's pretty, but it's like also the same kind of thing, just more lights, more of these like streaming ribbon type things, which are super cool, but like we've talked at least a little bit about how this is done. This is pretty cool. So this is like a chain ability. The effect itself, and I know it's like I'm just like whatever, like and you guys might be thinking like, well, like not whatever. That's super cool, and I want to do that. And we'll go over the concepts of how this whole thing is done. But like hopefully by now you realize that all these abilities pretty much pull from the same like library of concepts. Like I'll hit pause next time this goes through. So like if we were to go and dissect this, right? So what do we got here? We have more of those teeny tiny dots. They have this waviness to them, which is probably mathematical. And if I keep on saying math, and maybe you guys are getting scared, don't worry. Dominic, he's on the chat right now. He's taken this class, and he can probably attest. I don't make you guys do any math in this class, like whatsoever. So you guys don't have to worry about that bit. I do all the math for you if there is any math in the class. I will tell you how it works, and I will, I'll make you guys, put you in a position where you can talk about how it works. But have you guys ever heard of like a sine wave, like in class ever? And do you know what a sine wave is? It's that thing on your calculator, on your graphing calculator. It looks like it's like sin. Yeah, like sine, cosine, exactly. So if you ever like seen a sine wave, all it looks like is a wave that just goes up and down, over and over again. So, and I bet you when your math instructor told you, hey, so sine waves are super important, you should learn what they do and how they work, and then you immediately were probably given the worst explanation of a sine wave ever, and immediately said, I'm never going to use that. And to this day, you probably haven't. And so, you were right. I bet you though, that if your instructor explained to you the concept of a sine wave and then went and showed you a demo like this, you'd probably be like, wow, sine waves seem pretty important, and maybe I should go and like actually pay attention and learn about it. I know that's how I learned math, was not in class. I learned math after I found out all the cool, exactly, yes. Actually it's usually in Y. So remember like that a sine wave just kind of goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And then I want you to look at this. This just looks like a sine wave, up, down, with some slight variation that's being performed to it. Like, so if we were to just say, more or less, follow a sine wave, and then maybe we were to pass another wave through that sine wave just to kind of shake up that previous wave a little bit, then you get all of this great, what we actually call turbulence. So we have these waves that are shooting out, and as these waves are shooting out, we're passing multiple waves through them so that they start to, look interesting and all that stuff. And we're doing the same exact technique for these little tiny dots as we are for these streamers. And that's all there is to this ability. And if right now you're saying, whoa, so I got these two views, this view on the left looks way less dope than the view on the right, and you're correct. And the reason for this is actually another thing we're going to be talking about in this class, which is something that we call post-process. So I'm now going to turn off all post-processing. And you can see that if you saw this in a game, these days these graphics are sort of acceptable maybe on a mobile game. But even there, they'd actually probably look pretty tacky. Huge difference between when I click this one checkbox, right? All of a sudden it's like, whoa, it glows, and there's all sorts of extra stuff happening, and this looks super AAA and awesome. And this looks horrible. The funny thing is that this is about as good as we ever need to get with any of our visual effects. And then what we do is we utilize post-processing, which then goes and takes, just like post-processing works in film, you can have actors that look terrible and special effects that just aren't that great, or like, but not special effects, but, on-scene effects that just don't pull their own weight. And then you send it to editing and then they make it look good. Post-process is basically like the editing that goes in afterwards, except the difference is that it has to happen in real time. So we're editing each individual frame right after it gets spit out. And so we'll talk about that later on. I've been doing a lot of talking, and right now I'm just going to start to drink water. So do you guys have any questions, comments, or anything like that as we go through here? I think I know we still have some cool abilities. We haven't even got to my favorite one. I am not Dominic, but I am going to be doing shader editing this time. And so your class didn't get to do any shader editing, and this class is going to do a lot of it. But you're here, and so you can do it now. This thing, like the RFX4 mouse orbit script, that one. All that does is that allows me to kind of just move around the scene like you see me doing, like how I can click and drag and rotate and zoom in. That script just controls the camera that way. I know, Dom, like, make it better. Like, show a happy face. Like, that's why I was just like, hey, Dom, do you want to, like, join us and pseudo audit this class? Because I've made it even better than last semester. No. Ashley, the VFX? No, also not true. And this is why VFX is kind of magic, right? Because I don't want to say nobody knows how it works, but as soon as you start to build some of these effects, you're going to be part of an insider's club that's going to know a lot about how all this stuff is made, and most people just have to guess. So, no, the VFX are not attached to the camera. The camera is part of the final process that makes the VFX actually look great. And so it is true that this script is a form of visual effect. It is also true that what these guys are throwing around in the scene are also visual effects. And this is one of the reasons why it's really hard to describe, like, what are VFX? This is technically this checkbox thing right here. Like, you can see that it actually even impacts the flames. Look at how horrible these flames look. Just the flames when I turn off, when I check this on and off. We even get a highlight on this puddle right here that goes away whenever I uncheck this. So this is a form of visual effect. It's what we call a post-process effect, but it's not the only type of an effect. So yeah, what a post-process effect does typically is after your graphics card, or after your game has processed all of the pixels that need to go on the screen, it'll then send it to the post-processor. I'll talk more about the graphics pipeline and all that stuff later. But after it makes all the pixels, it'll then send them, and the post-processor will then say, okay, so now what I need to do is I need to do extra stuff. So in the case of this particular post-process, what it does is it looks for emissive values. Have you guys, like, in like your modeling and texturing played with emissive values and stuff? Look like this. Little bits. Nope. Yep. So, like, you know, like Tracer and Overwatch? Like, Tracer has a bunch of emissive parts to her, like, right? They're like usually like the glowy parts, or like Reaper's shotguns have like those little red glowy things. Reinhardt's eyes have like those little glowy parts. So it's essentially, emissive is basically saying two things. One is, I don't want you to be lit by the game engine, so don't do it. And the other thing that's being said is there's the possibility of that channel being involved with kind of spreading light outside, like elsewhere, and now it kind of makes sense why it's called emissive, right? It gets the name emissive because it, you know, ostensibly should be emitting. So yeah, so we have this emissive property, and so essentially what the post-processor does, what this post-processor does, is it looks for emissive properties or numbers that go over a certain threshold, and if they do, then it says, okay, so this thing is pretty emissive and it should be glowing, and so what it will do is it will create this almost like a blur where it will spread that color out within a fixed radius around all of the things that meet that requirement. And so that's why each one of these flames has an emissive property to it. And so that gets picked up by this post-processor. And so then what it does is it takes those emissive properties and makes them look more glowy by adding this radial blur and enhanced additive glow to it. Does that more or less make sense? More or less. Cool. All right, let's keep this a moving. Next effect. Fiery, smoke. I've been doing a lot of fire, a lot of smoke, a lot of embers and stuff recently. Super cool, but also nothing we haven't seen so far. Don't be fooled, even though this looks awesome, and it is. We've seen this before. It's just that instead of like it being a little thing that he holds in his hand, he just kind of bursts it through his chest. So kind of a nice little extra charge up there, but not a whole lot happening here that we haven't already seen. Same techniques. All right, I love this one. Watch that one again. So character throws up into the air a couple of projectiles with all this smoke flying behind him, which hits the ground, summons this evil rock monster, who then slams the ground, creating this like seismic spike. So much stuff happening here. There's also, as you this time, so instead of this time focusing on the rock monster, look for the seismic like distortion when he slams. Super duper cool. And then we get that nice dissolve at the end. Probably one of the more advanced effects that we've seen so far. And I swear I would love to see an effect that I don't know, I just don't think I've seen like an MMO or anything like that could pull off an ability that's this cool. Because there's just so much other stuff happening they have to account for. But I love this one. Let's see. So you attach the VFX to the hands, and then does the VFX literally move? In what case? Like so let's see. Like let me see the VFX object moving through the scene. Not always. Sometimes, maybe. Sometimes the VFX will be attached to the hands and follow them. Sometimes they will just be created out of thin air through something we just call instantiation, where we are creating something out of nothing. Which one? I do a lot of that. Oftentimes these characters, like he just doesn't have a bunch of these like, you know, these orbs just in his pocket or whatever. We're creating them at a certain frame of his animation. Gotcha. So that particular effect, and I'll go over how to create that one from start to finish in this class. And you know, Ashley's kind of doing the thing that Ashley does, where she talks about things that nobody knows about. So in the scripting class that Ashley was part of previously, I showed a teaser of one of the abilities that I was going to be doing in this class, and it's a ball lightning effect in which a sphere of lightning bounces between two characters, and it is this gelatinous energy orb. So in that case, no. Like there's with that one, there's no real-time instantiation. That object just always exists. It just bounces back and forth. All right, I think we're getting close to the end of these. Oh, this one's really cool. So I think this is like totally like your staple, like early on projectile. And it's just kind of like this thrust, like this wave of this, like I want to say arcane, because arcane is usually purple, but it's almost like this like frost sort of like energy. Have this nice leading distortion, followed by some nice particle movement. All right, this one's pretty cool. This might be my second favorite one. Arches back, boom, Nova, blood. So this is like in the blood magic family. So arches back, big Nova, seismic activity, blood and giblets just kind of like fracture, hit the ground, and then all of like this, like just this surge of upwards moving blood. Super, super awesome. Great example of concepts we'll be talking about later: primary motion, secondary motion, all sorts of super sweet stuff like that. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, occasionally I write tutorials on a like almost like a blog. So as I write those, I'll make sure to pass those along. I still have to finish that one. Writing just like kind of sucks sometimes, and I don't have all the time that I'd like. This is a super cool one. So character runs, jumps, hits the ground, and then we just get this nice impact crater, and then just some seeping through the cracks. More of the same. This is a really cool take on a frost nova, right? And so I think, Sierra, you said that you liked the that previous effect, like with like that dude getting frozen. Here we have this nice, really clean, like frosty mist, like this like fog, with some really, really great jagged mesh work. And this is probably one of the more successful frost novas that I've seen in a game. Really, really gorgeous work. Nice traditional fireball. Basic slam with a really dope fissure. This technique, I can almost guarantee we won't cover in this class, which will probably make you sad, but this is, I don't exactly, and I know how this one is achieved. I have theories on it, and I have the source for this, so I could just go find out. But something to think about is that with this ability, like just watch the crack. So we start off with this crack that then separates, and now we can see from different angles that it looks like the geometry has been carved out, but it actually hasn't. You could take this character, rotate him in any direction, have him do the same thing. You could even put it on the wood right over here or on the ground elsewhere, and the same effect would happen. And so what is likely happening is it is taking into account the angle of the camera, and it is approximating what it might look like if there was an opening in this mesh, and is overlaying that on top of what we are actually seeing. But clearly this is an effect that is incredibly advanced. It also, to me, looks like an effect that is incredibly expensive. The likelihood of you being able to actually put something like this in a game with all of the, I mean, I know you're thinking, well, I mean, it's in a game right now, it's in this engine, but you know, like in a game where you have a bunch of other stuff that's happening, this is a pretty isolated environment, right? Like if I zoom out, it's just this little arena. There's not a whole lot of stuff that's happening. So this might be affordable here, but I'm pretty confident that this is a pretty expensive effect. Yeah, you can see that as I approach, like watch this. So as I approach it from this angle, from this really, really shallow angle, you can really start to see where this effect starts to dissemble and fall apart. Because yeah, they're actually not cutting a hole in the mesh. They're actually just faking it with a camera with rendering order tricks. But kind of amazing. I am going to go over mesh stuff. Yes, more so than I did last semester by far. And I am going to be going a bit into doing simulations. I still have to figure out how far I can actually go with it, but my plan is for us to at least do a liquid simulation in this class. Nice, cool lightning. If I were to hit pause on this, this looks way less impressive. So like here, this looks amazing, right? Like it's like, wow, that looks like super duper cool. Over here, all we have is just a couple of really simple lightning, like just lightning textures that are all just being streamed to a focal point. So not as complex as this ability would make you believe. But that post-process work does, does quite a bit. This is where we start to get a lot less glowy, right? So this, instead of focusing on nice glows, this is mostly trying to demonstrate decal work and splatting to kind of show how we can take and essentially make a model look disgusting and covered with blood. So essentially decal work. This right here looks like a vine mesh that is, so remember like those rocks that kind of disintegrated? Imagine doing that effect in reverse. So that's what gets them here. So they're not actually growing from out of the ground. So they're kind of doing that disintegration, but in reverse so that they can appear. And then it is doubtful that this animation is being handled by bones. It looks like a lot of bones, and bones are really expensive in games. This is most likely a series of morph targets, and probably some baked vertex animation, and then we do a typical disintegration outro, or a dissolve. Morph target, it's basically where you specify, hey, here's a target, you vertices, move there. Yeah, it's cheaper than bones. Bones are really expensive, especially on some platforms. Bones get really, really, really expensive, especially if you want to use bones to pull off some like... yeah, if I'm saying like terminology like that you guys aren't like picking up, like don't worry, like this whole first like day is just for me to just let a whole bunch of stuff out and get you guys on the hype train, and then the subsequent classes I'm going to slow it down considerably, and we'll go through all that stuff. So don't worry, just spend today getting hyped. And I think that gets us all the way through these. I have a small set of other stuff to show you. Really, really small. Some weapon effects. What's up? Was that a question or an accidental microphone thing? Got it. All right. And then here's just like some mesh stuff. So we're gonna be playing around with like some weapon enchantments. So here's just like let me change a mesh over to like a sword. And so essentially what these effects do is they take into account the geometric shape of the object, and they use its vertices and geometric data in order to map how they should do VFX stuff. So you can basically imagine it's just like all the other effects that you've seen, same techniques and everything. The major difference is that we're using mesh geometry in order to drive some of our decisions at this point. Look at these feathers, super holy and angelic. It's purple, so it's evil and chaotic and dark. That's a flaming sword. This is like if this looks kind of like that dissolve effect, then go you for picking that out, because basically that's exactly what this is, the dissolve effect. Just instead of making it transparent after it passes over it, it doesn't. So yeah, interesting stuff. Any questions on what we're going to be covering in this course? I think that just by showing all of those, that probably did a better job of explaining what VFX like are, at least at the highest possible level, than if I prepared I actually have like a PowerPoint presentation that I like used to give, and I feel like it does not as great a job at showing or demonstrating what VFX are and really hit home. Yeah, I know PowerPoints. And really hits home on what it is that we're going to be making in a course like this. So any questions on that stuff? Nope, nope, nope. All right, is there anybody who's not, after seeing all this, is there anybody who's not excited about this? Hopefully you all are. All right, cool. I'm gonna take that silence as everybody's excited. So the things that you're gonna need for this class. Uh-oh, people are typing. No, don't be terrified. Don't be terrified. Like, I have a real, like, chill and calm way of going about all this, like, stuff. Right, Dom? Like, right, Ashley? Like, Eugene? When it comes to teaching, I'm, like, pretty chill. Not scary. Taking scary things and making them not scary is kind of my specialty. So, the things that you're going to need. Stop it, Eugene. It does not. I mean, like, I took you guys out to pizza last class, like, and I know it's like, well, at LCAD we have pizza all the time, but I took you guys to, like, good pizza. And yeah, I did it twice. Yeah, out of my own pocket. So how bad could I be? All right, so the things that you need for this class. First of all, you need Unity. Go download it. Make sure it's on your computers. The next thing that you need is you need to create a Unity account. And so Unity's, don't worry, whenever you install it and all that stuff, it's going to be like, hey, you want to create an account? Make an account. Now, this class does not have a textbook, but this class does have a requirement. You have to pay $40 for something, which will sort of act more or less as your textbook. You need to purchase an add-on for Unity that's going to allow you to pull off some of those really awesome effects that you saw. Yeah, don't worry about the textbook part. I've got that covered, but you do have to pick up something. So after you install Unity, you're going to go and click Window up here at the top, and you're going to click on Asset Store. And the asset that you're going to pick up it's actually right here. It's on the front. It's actually come down in price considerably. Just before this class started, it was $90. It's come down to $40. So now is the time to grab it. So Shader Forge is basically a node-based shader editor that will allow for us to write graphics, basically perform graphics programming visually, so we won't have to write graphics code, which is impeccably hard. So Dominic, I do prefer Amplify, but when it comes to the kinds of VFX that we're going to be making in this class, Shader Forge has a more robust and simple to use pipeline, and also is capable of yielding results faster. Amplify Shader Editor works great for surface shaders primarily. It was built from the ground up for surface shaders. And so its pipeline it caters to surface shading. And so in a more general sense, yes, Amplify Shader Editor has a lot going for it. But when it comes to a lot of like the particly stuff, the glowy stuff, things like that, Shader Forge is still the winner and is now cheaper. And trust me, you guys, it's totally going to be worth it. Because not only will you use it in this class, but you will use it probably for the rest of your professional lives. If not specifically this software, then the skills that you garner from it, they apply elsewhere. Yeah, totally used to cost $90. The new version of Unity is preferred, So yes, grabbing the latest version of Unity would be ideal. It has some nice extra things that we can do that just make life easier, improves performance, and also it's nice to stay ahead of the curve. Yup. As far as class requirements, that is all you need. You just need to have Unity, and you just need to have ShaderForge installed and ready to go, and that's it. I will take care of the rest. I assume that coming into this class, you have no knowledge of how to write code. You have no knowledge about how to use this ShaderForge thing. I'm even going to go so far as to assume that you have no knowledge of Unity or game engines, period. And so it's about as entry level as you can possibly get. Yet, by the end of it, we're going to be able to create some pretty amazing and sophisticated looking things. It's going to be great. Oh yeah, Dom, I'm going to be recording like everything. Like I'm recording right now, and so I'm going to be posting stuff up. You know what's like hilarious is that like LCAD booked me for another class at 7 like 2, so coincidentally I have a class at 7 as well. But our classes will never actually go that long. Like if you saw and we're just like, holy crap, like 5 hours of this online class. I know the same thing happened. I complained about it, but they didn't do anything. So yeah, our class will always pretty much hit a hard stop at 7 for one reason or another. But it's all right. I figure about that time, everybody will just be pretty much dead of staring at a screen share session. Yeah. So guys, typically what I do is I have like I'll host like a little like pizza get together, probably like at BJ's over by LCAT on El Toro, and I'll just like order a bunch of pizzas, and then yeah, I'm on a cut right now, so I can't eat pizza. So so hopefully it won't happen super soon. I usually do that at the start and at the end. The start is just so that I can meet you guys in person, and we can hang out and yeah. Well, that's great, Sierra, because if there's one thing that I have, it's a credit card. Ha! Thanks, ma'am. Yeah, I think I'm only cutting for another like 5 weeks. So yeah. But like, Eric here probably like has seen me at the gym and he thinks I'm like some sort of like manlet weakling or something like that. So I might have to switch over to bulking soon. Over there judging me on my rows. Appreciate, brah. Cool, guys. Like, so that's. I don't have a whole lot of stuff like to cover for today. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is like here in Skype, that we got all that stuff figured out. I want to make sure everybody knows what stuff they need for this class. And is ready to hit the ground running next time. Next time we meet up, I'm going to be showing you guys Unity. I'm going to be showing you guys how it works, how you can structure your environment, your scenes and all that stuff. So yeah, I assume that you currently don't have it installed, but will by the next time that we meet up. As long as you have it installed and as long as you've made the purchase for ShaderForge, you're going to be ready to go next time. I'll walk you through how to set up your layouts. And we're going to hit the ground running, so by the time we're done with next class, we'll have completed our first basic effect. So things will start moving super, super quick. a couple of things that I should say for you to mentally prepare is that this may be the most technologically demanding class that you have taken and possibly ever will take. I know that that's super scary, but like just for reals, that is a thing. Again, I'm going to assume no code, no nothing like that, but the reality is that in this class you will be writing code. In this class you will be doing technical things. In this class we will be thinking about how to go about optimizing our visual effects, and in order for us to do that we have to dive pretty deep into the graphics pipeline and how things go from concept to pixel and then post-process to pixel. So there's going to be a lot of technological stuff. But don't let all that scare you, because again, the one promise I make to you is that if I'm good at anything, it is making complicated technological things digestible. If not in academic form, then at least through pizza. All right, guys. Any questions? Pizza, I'll figure it out. But most likely what we'll do is we'll do just like kind of like I've done pizza in the past, where we'll do, well, I don't know. I'll just have to figure it out. Scheduling is super weird this semester, so it might be a little complicated, but I do plan on doing it, and it will be soon. I'll let you guys know. No, that's not a problem. Typically speaking, I'm going to be, like I'm recording right now, and then just as soon as we end, I start the process to get it up on YouTube. And so even if you miss like an early part of stuff, you can always just hop on that stream and watch it again. And then you can watch it again, and again in the future as well. So as the course progresses, if there's a technique that you forgot about early on, then you can just always go online and pull that down. So always have that resource. And then if you leave the course after you've graduated or like whatever, you'll still have access to them, unless my account gets banned or something weird. Will you be getting links for the videos? Yeah, so I'll always post them here, right here in the Skype chat. Every time it goes up to YouTube and they give me a link for it, I instantly copy and paste that link right into the chat. Try to make things as easy and non-stressful and straightforward as possible for you guys. But I am human, I make mistakes and all that. And so if I'm forgetting something, or if I just don't have my things together, just like please call me out and let me know. If I do forget to post a link, let me know. If I said I was going to cover something and then I got sidetracked or whatever, just let me know. Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, if there aren't any questions, that's all I've got. Just a real quick meet and greet, explanation of what you need for next time, and then we'll get to it. Go, dude. For sure, Eugene. Oh yeah, I'm most likely going to do it using Houdini Apprentice so that everybody can get it for free. Yeah, Houdini's like crazy hard, and so like Dominic, obviously, like that I've like upped my game for this semester over last semester, and I plan on continuing doing that. So I'm just kind of pushing the boundaries and And so yeah, I'm trying to do a bunch of super cool inventive things this semester. And so at some point we might just run out of time. I have a plan, but whether or not we're able to get through how ambitious that plan is remains to be seen. Here Unity looks like this. Gotcha. So the first thing that you probably want to do is click on Projects. And then click on like a button to make a new project. And after you've created a new project and it runs through all of that stuff, then inside of Unity, it should take you to a screen that looks kind of like this. And then up at the top, you can click on Window and Asset Store, which will take you to a screen that looks like this. And then you can just search for Shader Forge or just click on it right here. And even if like you don't snag Shader Forge by the time that I see you like next, when we go through the Unity like setup like process and the process of importing Shader Forge, you can do it then as well. So it's pretty quick. It's a huge question there, Ashley. Awesome, John. I'd say that it's very much the kind of question that I usually expect from you, Ashley. Houdini is it is basically a procedural 3D modeling software and simulations package. So you can simulate water, smoke, fire, things of that sort. And imagine if you were to conduct like build 3D models using nodes. that's what it is. It is not like your typical 3D modeling application where you manipulate shapes with vertices, edges, and faces. You kind of 3D model through nodes and code. Jesus, Ashley. A node is basically like, it's a set of instructions. Like, so you can think of subdivide as a node. So actually in Houdini, there is a subdivide node. So you can, like, if you wanted to subdivide, you could just apply a node to a shape and then it will subdivide it. But the nice thing about things being node-based and procedurally generated is that means that you can go back to any level of the model and insert a node in the middle of the node chain or the sequence of nodes, or modify it, and everything further on down the stack of nodes will also cooperate with those changes. It's kind of mind-blowing. Yeah, sort of. You'll get real good with nodes in this class, actually. Like if you're familiar with Substance Designer, yeah, you could totally do that with Houdini, building like a rock shatterer or a debris generator. But yeah, like think about it like in Substance Designer. Substance Designer is completely based around nodes. Your levels node, your warp nodes, exact same concept. Just imagine if instead of generating a texture with all of that stuff, you were instead applying changes to mesh information. And for those of you guys who don't have questions or anything like that, feel free to drop off. I won't feel like you're rude. I'm just answering questions that folks still have that are lingering. So for everybody who wants to drop off, feel free to do so. It's been great meeting you, and I look forward to seeing more of you. Yeah, John, it's exactly like Blueprints from Unreal. Same concept. The nodes in Blueprint are a little bit more like low level, like much more logic based, but same concept, totally. Bye, Evelyn. See you next time. Yeah, it's like Maya, right? Like it's capable of generating FBX files and things of that sort, or Max or whatever. Yeah, we'll probably be using Houdini briefly. Just for my plan is for us to do a fluid simulation, like liquid, and possibly do a smoke simulation. Because it's sort of the industry standard for VFX simulations. It's kind of like a thing that a lot of studios are adopting because they're realizing how great it is. So it's kind of like, you know, like Substance Designer and all of algorithmics like stuff where it's like, oh hey, this is like super dope and everybody should use it now. Like it's kind of like that, except for Houdini's been around for longer. It's just been like a real, like almost like a secret, and but now people are realizing how powerful it is and are diving into it. Yeah, it's actually not that bad, Dom. Like, Houdini does all the hard work for you. You basically just start a smoke sim, which is basically like one button click, and then you just tweak a bunch of parameters. The parameters that you probably want to tweak are you usually don't want the source of the smoke, and you usually don't want the top of the smoke, the plume, like where it starts to like dissipate and become uninteresting. You usually want to set up like some alphas to grab the center of like the smoke plume that it creates, the smoke simulation. And then you're gonna probably, so then what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna set up like your camera and your lights to make sure that the smoke more or less looks the way that you want. And then you literally just render out a sprite sheet and then import that sprite sheet into Unity. And then after that, you're pretty much good to go. You might want to write a shader that cleanly blends from one frame to the next so that you don't actually get the flipbook looking smoke. So you might want to do some nice fades from one to the next, or lerping from one position on the atlas to the next. So, I mean, I know it's like all this stuff will pretty much take you like a full day to do and to just kind of get right. After you do it for a day, you still won't, like if I were to put a gun to your head and say, do it again, you wouldn't be able to do it easily, like just because the steps are kind of convoluted. I'm oversimplifying it pretty dramatically, but more or less those are the general steps to creating smoke, at least in Houdini. Yeah, and but the kind of the nice thing is that you could totally use a Houdini smoke sim to drive. I don't know how you feel like about taking like pre-simmed stuff and then using that as a guide for your hand-drawn effects. But you can get some pretty great results from doing that, as opposed to just kind of arbitrarily trying to mimic. Like, right, you might actually get significantly better results. Is that it for questions, guys? except for Ashley, who just wants to troll me. Oh, what you talking about? Yeah, for sure, Eric. Some other forge. Shader forge. Oh, are you talking about like Surforge? Yeah, it's Surforge. Like the normal map stamper? Alright everybody, I'll go ahead and get this this posted up, and I will provide you guys the link in chat. No, you the best. Take it easy, everybody. Looking forward to it. Have a good day. You too, man. See ya. Laters.